key theme in biology is the relationship between structure and function. In order to appreciate the chemical and physical properties of water, we need to understand its molecular structure. The chemical formula of water is H2O, meaning that each molecule of water contains 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. Each hydrogen atom is connected to the oxygen atom with a covalent bond. Recall that this means that the 2 atoms share 2 electrons, one contributed by the hydrogen atom and one contributed by the oxygen atom. The oxygen atom also has 2 pairs of electrons it doesn't use to form chemical bonds. Right now it looks like all 4 pairs of electrons sit in one plane, but that's not quite right. Bonding electrons and unshared electron pairs tend to repel each other. The electron pairs are arranged in the shape of a tetrahedron, which lets the electrons be as far apart from each other as possible. This diagram shows that the 3 atoms don't lie in a line. Instead, the molecule has a shape that chemists call bent. Water's bent shape has important implications for its chemical properties. One of these properties is polarity. Polar means having an uneven distribution of electron density, so polarity means a condition or state in which a substance has an uneven distribution of electron density. We need to talk about 2 types of polarity, bond polarity and molecular polarity. Water exhibits both kinds of polarity. First, the bonds between oxygen and hydrogen are polar because the electrons aren't evenly distributed between the 2 atoms. As we see here, they're closer to the oxygen atom than to the hydrogen atom. A polar bond occurs when one atom in the bond is more electronegative than the other. Electronegativity is the tendency of an atom in a bond to attract shared bonding electrons. The bond between each hydrogen and the oxygen is polar because oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen. Water also exhibits the second kind of polarity. Its bent shape plays an important role in its molecular polarity. Let's look again at the linear depiction of the water molecule. If the molecule were linear rather than bent, the electron distribution would be even, not uneven, so the molecule would not be polar. Another way to think of this is that the pull of the electrons toward the oxygen from the bond on the left will be canceled out by the pull of the electrons from the bond on the right. Without a net pull in any direction, the molecule won't be polar. But remember, water is not linear, it's bent. We already know that the electrons in the 2 bonds are shifted toward the oxygen atom. More importantly, the 2 unshared electron pairs on oxygen mean that one region of the molecule has more electron density than the rest of the molecule. By definition, the water molecule is polar since there's an uneven distribution of electron density. We sometimes indicate the electron distribution by putting a partial positive charge, designated delta plus, on the hydrogen atoms and a partial negative charge, designated delta minus, on the oxygen. The polar structure of water has important consequences for the interactions that occur between water molecules in biological systems. The most important interaction between water molecules is hydrogen bonding. Recall that a hydrogen bond is a weak to moderate attractive force between a hydrogen atom bonded to oxygen, nitrogen, or fluorine and an oxygen, nitrogen, or fluorine atom on another molecule. Hydrogen bonds are usually represented by dotted lines. A hydrogen atom, at the partially positive end of the molecule, interacts with the partially negative oxygen atom on another water molecule. Hydrogen bonding also explains another unusual property of water. It's more dense as a liquid than as a solid. Density is the ratio of a substance's mass to its volume. Most substances are more dense in the solid phase than in the liquid phase, but water is an exception. This is easily demonstrated by the fact that ice floats, so it must be less dense than water. Here, the glass contains 300 milliliters of liquid water, which has a mass of 300 grams. This means its density is 1 gram per milliliter. Compare that to the mass of 100 milliliters of ice cubes. Their mass is just 91.7 grams, so the density of ice is 0.917 grams per milliliter. The definition of density tells us that a given mass of water molecules will have a larger volume in the solid phase. Therefore, the water molecules must be farther apart in ice than they are in liquid water. This results from the different hydrogen bonds in water and ice. In liquid water, on the left, the hydrogen bonds are constantly broken and reformed as the molecules move around. When we look closely at the structure of ice, we see a lot more open space. The arrangement of hydrogen bonds means the atoms are farther apart, so ice is less dense than water. Let's consider some of the biological consequences of ice's lower density. We already know that ice cubes float, but this also means that the ice on ponds, lakes, and oceans floats too. Fish, plants, and other organisms can survive because the ice insulates them from the much colder air above the lake. If ice didn't float, then a lake would freeze from the bottom up, killing everything living in it.